The sky above Altaris 9 writhed in roiling cobalt clouds, fractured by swirls of electric violet. Across the jagged plateau, jagged spires of obsidian rock rose like the teeth of some ancient beast. In the center of this eerie amphitheater, a great stone altar, black as void, stood under a ring of torchbearers. Their flames crackled with uncanny cerulean light, sending flickering shadows dancing across the weathered carvings that told the tales of generations. Zarina knelt before the altar, her wrists bound by crystalline manacles that pulsed with a faint blue glow. Each movement sent stabbing arcs of pain through her arms. Her silver hair, cropped close for her rank aboard the starship Odyssey, lay plastered to her neck with sweat and ash. The acrid scent of burning resin filled her nostrils, and every breath tasted like molten metal. All around her, the Vilrath tribe gathered in concentric circles. Their scaled bodies ranged in shades of azure and indigo, each warrior decorated with mesmerizing glyphs that glowed like veins of light under their skin. Some held tall spears tipped with razor-sharp crystal. Others clutched curved daggers carved from the skulls of ancient sea beasts. Their eyes, multifaceted like gemstones, gleamed with fervor. At the forefront, Elder Vokrak raised his spindly arms. His voice, ancient, crackling like the fire itself, spoke words Zarina did not understand, yet felt deep within her chest with every syllable. The chanting grew in intensity, weaving a spell of dread that made the stones at her back vibrate. "Oh, Storm Mother, hear our call. Accept our envoy." The chorus of voices rose, punctuated by the echo of distant thunder from the clouds above. Zarina's heart thundered in her ears. She scanned the circle desperately for a glimpse of sympathy, an opening, anything. But the Vilrath showed no hesitation. Their devotion was absolute. She had been captured days earlier on a scouting mission gone wrong. A miscalculated hyperspace jump left the Odyssey stranded in this forbidden system, and she alone had fallen into Vilrath hands. Lightning traced glowing veins across the sky, illuminating the towering stone pillars etched with the tribe's sacred history. Zarina's gaze lingered on one carving, a garbed figure offering a bound victim to a colossal storm so fierce it swallowed the horizon whole. Her throat constricted. Here, she would meet the same fate. A warrior to her right tossed a handful of resin shards onto the altar. Instantly, the resin snapped and whispered in sapphire tongues before igniting into furious blue flame. Zarina felt the heat before she saw it, an invisible wave that blistered her skin and made her knees buckle. The crystal manacles glowed brighter, drawing the fire like a beacon. Elder Vokrak moved closer, his eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. In his clawed hand, he held a ceremonial dagger, its blade etched with ancient runes. He spoke once more, no longer a chant, but a command. The Vilrath tightened their circle, the torchlight revealing rows of sharp teeth bared in anticipation. Zarina's breath came in ragged gasps, her chest stinging from the sulphurous smoke. She forced herself to calm, to think. Escape seemed impossible. The rocky cliffs beyond were sheer. The downpour of rain would make any climb treacherous. And even if she did break free, she'd face the storm itself, the very deity the tribe worshipped. Her mind flicked back to her training. Remember the fundamentals: assess, improvise, overcome. She tested the crystal bands with her strength, too solid to shatter. The bonds fed on her own life force. The more she struggled, the tighter they became. She needed an outside force, something to divert the Vilrath's focus. The chanting rose to a fever pitch. The fire climbed higher, licking at the air with tongues of ethereal blue. Zarina felt panic creep into her veins, but she forced it down. Instead, she focused on the rhythm of the chant, counting its cadence. Elders always slipped into a pattern. Every ritual had its moments of vulnerability. As the priestess beside Vokrak raised a censer to scatter more incense, Zarina caught her scent, a hint of crushed nightbloom petals. She inhaled, letting the fragrance sharpen her senses. She noted the priestess's bare feet, scorched calluses and a faint limp in her gait. Not immune to pain after all. Lightning cracked overhead, and in that flash Zarina saw movement in the shadows at the edge of the clearing, a flicker of metal, something aloft, descending. The tribesfolk didn't notice yet. They were lost in the ceremony. Hope surged in Zarina's chest. She summoned her strength, twisting violently. The crystals groaned. The moment between sparks stretched, pregnant with possibility. A distant roar, a voice human and commanding, cut across the clearing like a burst of cannon fire. The Vilrath froze in mid-chant, eyes widening. The fire sputtered as if startled, and the clouds above parted for a moment, revealing a beam of white light slicing down from the heavens. Zarina's heart lurched. Someone had come. The altar stone beneath her quivered, and the chanting broke off into startled cries. All eyes swung toward the forest's edge where a lone figure stepped into view. A human, clad in the uniform of the coalition. In a heartbeat, the ritual's momentum shattered. The Vilrath bristled, unsure whether to defend their sacred right or heed the new presence. The fire's cerulean tongue stuttered, then died back as the wind howled through the plateau, carrying away the smoke. Zarina's chest felt light for the first time since her capture. As she watched the stranger stride forward, pulse hammering with shock and relief, she knew her world had changed in a single instant. The Storm Mother's sacrifice would wait, because a human had arrived on Alteris 9, and nothing would ever be the heat surged around Zarina like a living beast, its cerulean tongues licking her ankles as the flame-fed altar roared to life. With every chant of the Vilrath, the fire climbed higher, sending waves of scorching air that warped the edges of her vision. Smoke curled into her lungs, acrid and thick, and her skin prickled where the heat seared through her thin uniform. Desperation gripped her chest. She shifted her weight, trying to lever the crystalline manacles free against the cold stone of the altar, but the bonds only pulsed tighter, feeding on her exertion. The scars along her forearms glowed faintly where the crystals bit into flesh, a cruel reminder that every struggle would cost her more of herself. All around, the Vilrath danced in hypnotic unison, their chanting built to a frenzy, a storm, of voices that rivaled the thunder rolling overhead. Zarina's ears rang, and in that maelstrom she could just make out Elder Vokrak's voice, rising above the rest, a promise to the Storm Mother of a soul offered and consumed. She tasted bile, as a fresh wave of smoke overtook her. Her vision flickered, then in the corner of her eye the clearing blurred as if seen through rippling water. The tribal warriors stiffened, their ritual momentarily fractured. Zarina's heart lurched as a crackling discharge echoed through the air. A burst of electric blue light shattered the illusion of ceremony. One of the altar's supporting stones exploded outward, shards spraying like deadly rain. The Vilrath recoiled, surprised roars spilling from their throats as ash and dust billowed around Zarina's trembling form. Marcus Hale stepped forward, energy pistol in hand. His voice cut through the turmoil. "Stand down." The word boomed metallic and sure. He fired a precise shot at the crystalline lock around her wrist. The manacle cracked, spiderwebbing with fractures until it collapsed into glittering fragments. Zarina gasped as Marcus yanked her free, but the other manacle held firm. A warrior leapt forward to thrust a spear at him, but Marcus sidestepped with unnatural calm, his booted foot finding purchase on slick obsidian. He fired again, two quick bursts that struck the crystal at its seam, and with a final sharp crack it fell away. Her wrists bare and bleeding, Zarina staggered back into Marcus's arms. Behind them, the altar's flames sputtered, the fire creeping outward to engulf the ritual platform itself. The Vilrath hesitated, torn between defending their sacred ritual and rallying against this human interloper. Ritual horns blared, and Elder Vokrak bellowed an order. Warriors formed a phalanx. Spears angled toward the clearing's center. The rain began in earnest now, large drops sizzling on hot stones and sending plumes of steam into the charged air. Lightning danced closer, as though the Storm Mother herself watched the unfolding scene. Marcus leveled his pistol at the oncoming wave of warriors. "Back off," he warned, voice tense enough to carry over the din. He squeezed the trigger, and the energy beam seared into the ground at their feet, sending a shockwave that scattered the front line. Zarina pressed her hand against his arm, feeling the tremor beneath his uniform. "We have to move. Now," she rasped, voice hoarse. He nodded, eyes flicking to the tree line where the forest loomed dark and dripping. As one, they broke toward the edge of the plateau. Spears whistled past them, embedding in the rocky earth. A warrior sprinted to intercept, but Marcus pivoted, opening his other hand to reveal a small glowing sphere. He hurled it at the ground, and the EMP pulse blossomed outward in a shimmering wave, and the remaining torches died in mid-flare. Stunned cries of shock pierced the night. In the sudden gloom, Zarina and Marcus plunged into the forest, branches whipping their faces, rain soaking through their clothes. The crack of twig and roar of thunder chased them onward, every footstep carrying them further from the altar, and deeper into the unknown dangers of Altaris IX's storm-shrouded wilds. Behind them, the Vilrath's furious roars faded as the forest swallowed sound. Zarina's lungs burned with each gasp of air, but adrenaline lent her wings. She looked at Marcus, gratitude and fierce determination in her eyes. "What now?" she panted. He glanced over his shoulder, pistol raised, eyes scanning the darkness. "We find shelter. Then we figure out how to get off this rock before they regroup." Lightning flashed, illuminating their silhouettes as they vanished between ancient trunks. The night reclaimed its secrets, but Zarina knew the storm had only just begun. The rain-soaked forest swallowed Zarina and Marcus the moment they dove beneath its dripping canopy. Lightning fractured the sky in furious flashes, illuminating tangled roots and towering trunks painted with bioluminescent moss. The sudden downpour masked their footsteps and washed away the scent of smoke, buying them precious minutes before the Vilrath could mount a pursuit. Marcus led the way on instinct, pressing against a broad oak whose roots formed a natural alcove. Within its hollow he knelt and fumbled in his pack, retrieving a compact medkit. Zarina sank to the mossy floor, chest heaving, as he snapped open the case. "Your arms," he said quietly, eyes scanning the jagged cuts where the crystalline manacles had bitten her skin. He tore strips of fabric from his shirt, damp and clinging, and gently cleaned the wounds with antiseptic pads. Each movement was precise, practiced. Zarina closed her eyes against the sting. "Why help me?" she whispered, voice raw. "I'm a stranger, a threat." He paused, pausing over a particularly deep abrasion. "Because sometimes," he said, "it's not about who you are. It's what you do in the moment that counts." He wrapped her forearm with careful knots, then shifted to her other arm. "Besides," he added with the hint of a smile, "I owe my own life to someone I've never met." A crack of thunder rolled overhead as rain drummed against the canopy. Zarina opened her eyes to find Marcus watching her, the pale glow of bioluminescence flickering across his jaw. Under the hood of his coalition jacket, his hair was plastered to his temples, and for a moment she saw not a soldier, but a fellow survivor. "Coalition Special Missions," he said, untying the bandage on her second arm. I was tracking a weapons cache, biogenic warheads that can shape bioorganisms at the molecular level. There were rumors the Vilrath had obtained one. He paused to let her absorb this. When my ship went down, I knew I couldn't let that weapon be used in a tribal ritual, or worse, sent to another faction. His words sent a chill through Zarina sharper than the rain. The thought of a bioweapon at the altar made the tribal sacrifice pale by comparison. You risked everything for that? She asked. He met her gaze steadily. For every life that weapon could cost, he said simply. A distant howl cut through the storm, the shrill call of a Vilrath scout. Zarina's breath hitched. Marcus already had his plasma pistol raised, scanning between the trees. They'll come down the ridge, he murmured. We need to move, and fast. He helped her to her feet. Each step sent pain lancing through her bandaged arms, but she steadied herself on his shoulder. Together, they crept through the underbrush, following a shallow stream that glimmered ghostly silver under the stormlight. After a tense half-hour, the forest began to thin, giving way to a plateau scattered with the ruins of an ancient civilization. Rock, walls inscribed with weather-worn glyphs, shattered columns half buried in moss. Marcus guided Zarina toward a collapsed archway. Here, he said, voice low. It should be dry inside. They slipped into the chamber, and the storm's fury stilled instantly. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the scent of earth and old stone. Patches of phosphorescent lichen clung to the walls, casting a pale, mottled glow. Zarina leaned against a fractured column, grateful for the refuge. As they settled, Marcus checked a wrist-mounted hollow communicator. Signals jammed, he reported. Storm interference or deliberate saboteur? He tapped a sequence on the device and frowned. I can activate a short-range beacon, but it'll take time, and it'll draw attention. Zarina pressed her lips together. The weight of her own failed mission pressed down on her. We need each other, she said quietly. I know the Odyssey's distress beacon is still out there somewhere. If we pool our resources... She trailed off, imagining a rescue. Marcus studied her thoughtfully, then nodded. Agreed. First we rest and recover, get you back on your feet. Then we find your crew, disable the weapon, and get off this planet. He offered his hand. Truce? She took it, the pain in her arms a reminder of how fragile alliances could be. Truce. In the hush of the ancient ruins, the storm beyond pounded against the stone but could not reach them. Under the watchful gaze of phosphorescent watchers, two unlikely allies began to forge a plan. Secrets had been shared in the darkness. Now, in the glow of old light, purpose and hope was reborn, The forest around them had turned into a tempest of wind and rain. Every tree limb threatened to snap under the weight of water, sending splinters racing towards Zarina and Marcus as they pushed onward. The stream at their side had swollen too, a raging creek, its currents tugging at their boots. Lightning cleaved the sky in jagged strokes, briefly illuminating their path before plunging them back into uneasy darkness. Marcus led with cautious confidence, firing short bursts from his plasma pistol into the undergrowth whenever shadows lurked too close. Each shot hissed and sizzled in the humid air, drawing startled cries from unseen creatures, and occasionally the low guttural snarls of Vilrath warriors. Zarina pressed close behind him, her bandaged arms aching with every step but her resolve unbroken. They rounded a bend in the creek and came upon a narrow ravine spanned by a fallen tree trunk. The wood was slick with moss and rain. A misstep would mean a tumble into the swirling water below. Cross here, Marcus whispered, testing, the log with one careful foot. Zarina squared her shoulders and followed, arms outstretched for balance. Halfway across, a thunderous roar echoed from the cliffs above. Vilrath scouts had spotted their trail again. "Faster," Marcus urged, vaulting onto the far bank. Zarina's heart slammed as she leapt after him, landing in a puddle that soaked her boots. They pressed into the shadows of the cliffside where the rock face sloped inward to form a narrow overhang. Beneath it lay the remnants of a collapsed mining tunnel, twisted girders and broken pipes. But the hollow beyond offered shelter from both the storm and the enemy. Inside the tunnel, the air was still and cool. Phosphorescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an eerie green glow over rusted machinery. Zarina shivered, both from the cold and the memory of the altar's flames. Marcus crouched by a derelict control panel, fingers flying over exposed circuitry. "I'm going to rig this to send a jamming pulse out," he said, voice echoing softly off the stone. "Should buy us time by blinding any Vilrath comms in the area." As sparks danced across the console, Zarina scanned the darkness beyond the fungus-lit zone. Her chest tightened as she spotted movement, sleek shadows slipping through the tunnel's entrance. "They're coming," she hissed. Marcus hit a final switch. The panel glowed bright for an instant before a low hum vibrated through the metal beams. Outside, a distant cascade of static and a loud bang told them the jamming pulse had succeeded. The first Vilrath scout rounded the bend, dagger drawn, but the lack of radio chatter left him disoriented. Marcus sprang forward, striking with the butt of his pistol. The warrior crashed to the ground, stunned but not unconscious. Another followed, snarling, but Zarina met him mid-step with a precise kick that sent him sprawling across the fungus-carpeted floor. The stench of fear and wet scales filled the cramped space. Within minutes they had cleared a path back to the open forest, at least long enough to make a dash for the canyon rim, where Marcus claimed the coalition extraction team would attempt a flyby. The storm had begun to abate, but clouds still roiled overhead like dark sentinels. Zarina's lungs burned from the exertion, her legs trembling, but the promise of rescue drove her forward. They crested the ridge just as a distant thrum reached their ears, rotor blades slicing through the thinning storm. Zarina's pulse leapt. Marcus raised his arm, activating a pocket-sized flare launcher. The bright cerise flare arced into the sky, bursting into a beacon of light that cut through the clouds. Moments later, the silhouette of a coalition shuttle emerged, dropping low over the canyon rim. The Vilrath warriors, drawn by the light, scrambled up the slope, spears raised, war cries echoing. Marcus grabbed Zarina's hand and sprinted toward the shuttle's open cargo ramp. Bullets pinged off the hull as they leapt inside. The ramp slammed shut, and the shuttle lifted off, banking sharply to avoid the cliff's edge. Through the reinforced viewport, Zarina watched the Vilrath warriors standing at the ridge, their glowing glyphs aglow in the fading stormlight. Among them, Elder Vokrak raised his clawed hand in a silent vow of vengeance. As the shuttle climbed into the clearing sky, Zarina sank to the floor, every muscle trembling. Marcus knelt beside her, offering a water flask. She drank gratefully, then met his gaze. Lightning forked across the clouds one last time, and in that flash she saw both relief and a steely determination in his eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "For now," he replied. "But the Vilrath will not forget." And the shuttle's engines roared as it punched through the thinning clouds, leaving Altaris 9's storm-scarred world behind. Inside the cramped cabin, Zarina and Marcus slumped against the Spartan benches, every muscle aching from their ordeal. The hum of the life support systems and the steady thrum of the engines was a welcome balm after the chaos of the forest, but neither spoke as they rode the tense minutes to safety. At last, The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're approaching orbit. Coalition Command wants you to debrief as soon as you land. Welcome aboard the Obsidian Hawk." The hatch clanged open, and the pair were escorted into the brightly lit command deck. Screens displayed star charts, sensor readouts, and the slowly receding curve of Altaris 9 below. Officers in black-trimmed uniforms moved with brisk efficiency. A senior officer, a tall woman with silver hair pinned in a coil, stepped forward. "Zarina Kess, Marcus Hale," she said, voice crisp. "Your actions prevented a catastrophic misuse of biogenic weapons and saved a Federation envoy. You both receive commendations immediately. But we need the full account." Zarina exchanged a glance with Marcus before answering. "We were captured by the Vilrath tribe," she began, voice steady. "They intended to sacrifice me to their storm mother, using a biogenic warhead to amplify the ritual. Captain Hale intervened, disabling the weapon and rescuing me." The officer's eyes narrowed. A biogenic warhead? On a tribal world? She tapped at a holodisplay, summoning footage from Marcus's helmet cam. The image wavered, then showed the crystalline altar, the pulsing bonds, the flash of Marcus's shots. Marcus stepped forward. "We believe the weapon was smuggled through Coalition channels, rogue agents hoping to sell it to the highest bidder. We need a full investigation." The officer's jaw tightened. "Understood. We'll convene a tribunal. In the meantime, you two are off duty. Rest and recover." Later, in a quiet corridor, Zarina and Marcus paused beneath the glow of corridor lamps. The shuttle's motion had faded. They were truly safe at last. "I never imagined I'd be rescued by a human," Zarina said, voice soft. "I've spent my life trusting science and logic, but what you did was pure courage." Marcus smiled wryly. "Guess I had good reason to act. You reminded me why we fight. To protect life, even on worlds we don't understand." She tilted her head, studying his profile. "Will you stay on Altaris 9, the planet's history, its people? I feel there's so much more to learn here." He looked out a viewport at the distant blue star. "I have orders to return to Coalition HQ," he said. "But once we've cleared this investigation, I volunteer for a research mission to Altaris 9. I want to make sure the Vilrath don't suffer for the sins of smugglers." Zarina's smile was radiant. "Then we'll both be back, together." The shuttle leveled off into hyperspace, stars streaking into lines of light. As the stars blurred, Zarina reached for Marcus's hand. The ordeal behind them had forged an unbreakable bond, a promise carried beyond the tempest of Altaris 9 into the infinite reaches of space, where new worlds and new alliances awaited.